Prompt 2, are some types of knowledge more useful than others? Rephrasing the question, is some knowledge simply better to have than other kinds? Why might we think that a surgeon's toolkit outranks a poetry anthology in usefulness? By exploring these questions, we can reflect on how our personal values and the needs of society shape what we consider useful knowledge. Before we explore whether some types of knowledge are more useful than others, we need to clarify what we mean by useful. Do we mean life-saving usefulness? Do we mean economic usefulness, such as market knowledge or business strategies, or creative? Usefulness is not fixed. It is contextual and value-laden. In a hospital, anatomy knowledge might be more useful than a knowledge of abstract art in a museum. The opposite might be true. So instead of asking, is this knowledge useful, we should ask, useful for what and to whom? Example 1. A stethoscope, medical knowledge, life-saving usefulness. A stethoscope represents practical medical knowledge, the ability to diagnose illnesses and monitor health, the knowledge behind how a stethoscope works, sound conduction, physiology, clinical training, is immediately useful in saving lives and improving well-being. A trained doctor can detect a heart murmur or lung infection simply by listening. This is direct, applied knowledge with high perceived value. TOK connection. The stethoscope highlights the utility of knowledge in applied science, where knowledge directly translates into action. Its usefulness is not questioned because we value health and survival highly in most societies here. The knowledge is useful because we value life and we value medical expertise. However, the usefulness of the stethoscope also depends on the context. In a world without access to hospitals, or in a future with AI diagnostic tools, its practical relevance could shift thus. It evolves with time and technology. Example 2. A poetry anthology, literary knowledge, emotional and cultural usefulness at first glance. It doesn't cure diseases or predict the weather, but poems preserve cultural memory. For someone grieving, a poem might provide more healing than a pill in times of crisis. TOK connection poetry exemplifies the subjective and emotional value of knowledge. It shows how knowledge in the arts can shape understanding, meaning, and personal identity. It helps us navigate emotions and cultural belonging while it may lack tangible impact. Its value lies in how it transforms our inner world. This challenges a narrow definition of usefulness. If we only count economic or scientific usefulness, we also risk devaluing disciplines like literature, philosophy, and art, which are essential for critical thinking and ethical reflection. Example: stock market data, economic knowledge, strategic usefulness. Consider a screen showing real-time stock value. This represents economic knowledge, understanding markets, trends, and financial forecasts. Such knowledge is clearly useful to investors, businesses, and governments. The knowledge here is strategic and predictive, helping people make decisions that impact livelihoods. TOK connection. This type of knowledge shows how usefulness is often measured by outcomes and control. If knowledge helps us predict the future or gain advantage, we call it useful. But this also raises ethical questions. Useful for whom? For profit, for justice. The financial knowledge used to manipulate markets or dodge taxes may be useful to a few, but harmful to others. Thus, just because something is useful doesn't mean it is good. TOK invites us to explore how power and purpose shape what we count as useful knowledge. Example 4. Modern versus ancient farming, tools, agricultural knowledge, evolving usefulness. Both represent knowledge of farming, but their usefulness depends on the era and the problem. Ancient tools were breakthroughs in their time. Modern methods are more efficient, but also more resource-intensive in drought-prone regions. TOK connection. This example shows that historical and cultural knowledge can remain useful even when it seems outdated. It also reminds us that usefulness is shaped by environmental context and sustainability in this way. TOK helps us question the assumption that newer knowledge is always more useful. Sometimes, the old ways carry wisdom we've forgotten to value. Balancing theoretical and practical knowledge. Finally, let's consider abstract knowledge like pure mathematics or theoretical physics. These don't immediately solve problems, but can become incredibly useful later. For example, number theory seemed useless for centuries until it became essential in encryption algorithms that protect online data TOK insight. This reveals that usefulness can be delayed, and unpredictable knowledge that seems useless today might solve tomorrow's crisis. This invites epistemic humility. We shouldn't dismiss knowledge just because it lacks current application. In fact, the freedom to explore impractical ideas often leads to innovation. So, in valuing usefulness, final reflections: who decides what's useful? Ultimately, usefulness is not objective. It's shaped by personal goals, societal needs, and ethical priorities. What's useful for a refugee might be different from what's useful for a billionaire, a community healer, and a corporate lawyer. Use different knowledge systems. Neither is inherently more useful. It depends on context. As TOK thinkers, we must ask: useful for what? Useful to whom? What values are behind our judgments of usefulness? Some types of knowledge have clear, immediate applications. The most robust knowledge systems integrate both the practical and the poetic, the technical and the thoughtful. Conclusion: yes, some types of knowledge are more useful than others, depending on how we define usefulness, who we are, and what we value. But this doesn't mean we should discard less useful knowledge. Instead, we should strive to appreciate the full spectrum of what knowledge offers: survival, innovation, beauty, and meaning. A world that values only utility risks becoming efficient but soulless.